The city of Lagos
there is still a poor level of
Be the first to know. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa, we break the news.
We are one Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV News.
24-hour news station.
Good morning and welcome to Core Digest. I am Martins Dixon. Today we will be looking at the mysterious statements that have been coming, or the mystery surrounding the missing fighter jets that has been involved in the fight against insurgency, attacking the Boko Haram insurgents in northeastern Nigeria. You could remember that Friday, the jet set on a mission and has not been found up till now. I have two gentlemen in the studio who are going to help us analyze and look at the situation on ground and see how we will be able to see the intricacies surrounding the missing jet and the fight against insurgency, or how it is going to affect the fight against insurgency, particularly the Boko Haram terrorism. I have in the studio Liberos Osoma. He is a public affairs analyst. Welcome to Core Digest.
Thank you.
And we also have Bola Oban, a political analyst. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for the opportunity once again.
Yeah. We woke up over the weekend and up to today with the story of a fighter jet going missing. No records, no trace, and no fundamental statements coming from where this fighter jet is. Let me just paint a scenario here. So to say, after what the military called a successful operation, the fighter jet is not back to base. Let me start with you, Bola Oba. Do we refer to this as a mystery, or can it be explained in a form of way?
No, we have had instances. We have had instances in both civil and military aviation or avionics where a craft could disappear and take a while before you get to see it. So I like to be balanced when we, you must remember that about 3 or 4 years ago there was a craft that took off from Abuja and was heading in the direction of Obudukatu Ranch. I think it was a light military testing too, but not a fighter jet. A conventional, but small craft.
They were going for a retreat.
The Army generals were going for a retreat, and the thing went off the radar, and it took us more than a year or so to eventually locate the decrepit remains of the fire of the craft and the people who were in it. It does happen as we speak now. Even with the best of technology being deployed by nations such as Australia, the Malaysian airliner, this thing with about 130-something people, is still being searched for in that part of the world. It does happen. However, and this is how I will want to. We know it does happen. When it happens, there are things that the government of the country and indeed the authorities should do, and we have a peculiar situation in our armed services that is also instructing something that is bordering on the bazaar. That is where I want to stop now.
I wouldn't want you to stop us there. Things that are disturbing in the bazaar. Now, what are those particular things? Before I go to liberals,
we as we speak, in the contention between the Nigerian Armed Services and Boko Haram, we have had the unthinkable, we have read the unthinkable of senior officers collaborating against their own men subjecting their men to danger. Some died, and it actually spawned, in one instance, it spawned a case of mutiny. So that was obvious enough. So if one senior officer could do it, and indeed one of the topmost ever occupant of a strategic military office as we speak is being alleged to have been privy to some treasonable conduct, my brother, then we are not functioning in an ideal situation. Ideal situation would have been, oh, maybe due to technology, the fragility of technology, maybe due to the fact that we don't have the necessary wherewithal, the necessary infrastructure in place. The plane went out of the radar, dropped somewhere, but eventually we will find it. That in some respectable jurisdictions where honor still means literally what it should mean, honor. That would have been the angle we would have been looking at it. But in the light of the backdrop that we have had instances in this country when people who should be waving our flag the most were caught dipping our flag in the mud just for their own personal lucre, personal profit. My brother, you want us to keep an open mind.
All right, Liberals, what do you make out of a fighter jet disappearing and not being located?
My friend Bola has said, we have had instances, even the Bearview plane that crashed somewhere not too far from Lagos. You know, for almost 3 or 4 days, that Bearview plane was said to be missing because they said the radar immediately after taking off, a few minutes after taking off, the radar, it disappeared from the radar. And also at that time, our equipment, if you remember, were not sophisticated enough. You know, they had to now improve, you know, the equipment and then the surveillance equipment at the airport. And but the for the fighter jets, I know that in scenarios such as this, when they take off, there is always communication between, you know, the jets and the control room. You know, at the base, at the Air Force base, there are control rooms from where they take off, whether it's taking off from a vessel or taking off from a base. You know, there is always you know, that communication. And although I agree these are security matters, I don't expect them to come all out to tell us, you know, all the detail. But with what had been happening, you know, in the fight against insurgents, and with all the revelations we are hearing, I think it's, you know, very shameful and very disheartening for somebody to look us in the face now and say, well, you know, a fighter jet took off and is missing in, you know, that small locality around that Meduguri Aziz, and you know, and that's, you know, it will further fuel the suspicion that truly there are some elements within, you know, our military and within government that are actually sustaining, you know, this fight, this Boko Haram insurgent. And then also, mind you, some people also have said that if you look at the budget for the military in the past 2 or 3 years, you know, you would know, and then the behavior of Nigerians, because before the program we were talking about our behavior when it comes to money. We'll do anything and everything. If we shortchange our own parents, you know, to enrich ourselves. And so with the behavior of Nigerians, you know that some people would want to maintain this status quo. Also, coming on the heel of the revelation by Stephen Davis that the former Chief of Army Staff, General Ejirika, And Modu Sharif, you know, have a hand in this, in the financing of Boko Haram. And then also an unnamed CBN top shot known to the presidency. And when you put all of this together, and then against the backdrop also of the fact that there was a time in this Lagos, a vessel, a mighty vessel, African Pride, got missing.
Literally.
Until date, you know, it just gradually fizzled out. Until date.
No, some admirals were court-martialed. I think some were.
Yes, but at the end of the day, that vessel till date, nobody can tell us that where they were about. Later, we heard that the vessel was brought to Marina they repented the vessel and, you know, took it out there. But a vessel in this Lagos, in Nigeria, got missing. And it was just, you know. And then, now, with the recent happening, that same Friday, the synagogue building collapsed. And then on Sunday morning, the pastor in charge, Pastor T.B. Joshua, coming out to say that it was a terrorist attack, that there was an helicopter hovering around the church just before the collapse, and that it was targeted at him and all of this. So when you put all of this together, you would do nothing but laugh in the face of this comic. I call it comic relief. Because for other serious nations, I was discussing with Bola, you listen to other leaders saying in the fight against ISS that they will take the fight to them. They will chase them to the gate of hell, because that is where they truly belong. But here, we don't make tough statements like that. Rather, you hear statements like tactical maneuvering. I wonder what that is. Maybe it's another way for tactically avoiding, you know.
Now, so someone was analyzing the situation in one of the papers that I read this morning, and was saying, could it be probably a tactical flight maneuvering also, and the plane is somewhere in another country?
Exactly, maybe. Because if you look at the photographs that Shekau, the leader of Boko Haram, had released.
APC, you always see APC behind it. Armored personnel carrier.
Armored personnel carrier behind him.
And these guys operate in a fleet of Hilux.
And these are not small vehicles that we just fly into wherever they are. And so, you know, and when you now just oppose that with this fighter jet,
we may soon be seeing Shekau when he's talking, and
you see a fighter jet behind him.
Let's put this side by side. Bola, over the weekend, the chief of army staff, when he visited the wounded soldiers in 44 Reference Hospital in Kaduna, said most of the equipment the Boko Haram fighters use are stolen equipment and equipment they've gotten from military armory, and they could not be said to have more firepower than the Nigerian army. And you just talked about the Liberals just talked about armored personnel carrier.
Maneuvering tactically.
No, let's be very serious now, but because this is a tragedy. It's a tragedy because it defines the state of our being in this country, all of us. And you see, it's easy to be opportune to sit on a very hallowed platform such as this and be pointing accusing fingers, speaking good grammar and lambasting others. But you see, we need a reevaluation of our values in this country. It's serious. If we don't want our children to be cursing our memories. My brother, what you have quoted the gentleman to have said is not strange to anybody. About 3 years ago, Liberals, you will remember, about 3 years ago, some officers, 1 or 2 officers of the Nigerian Army and some men of the Nigerian Army were actually court-martialed for pilfering weapons from the Nigerian Army armory and selling to the South militant of this. Some of them were convicted. They are still serving terms as we speak. It has gotten to a point where a Nigerian thinks first about his pocket even before thinking about national security, which also involves not only his life, but the lives of his own children. It is preposterous. We are in a big mess, morally and value-wise. In a big mess. There is nothing. Look, somebody was telling me jocularly that if you need the hand of Mr. President to be detached away from his body and bring it to somewhere to sign a document for you and quickly return it back, they will organize it for you in Nigeria. In so much as the price is right.
Yeah, we have seen
Now,
seen it happen here.
Now, how do we
Yaradua
get...
signed a budget while he was in the hospital in Saudi Arabia. He signed the budget in Abuja. So the hand was probably brought from Saudi Arabia. Quickly signed.
Now, how did we get to that point in our system? The Nigerian military has been quoted to have been very disciplined and very professional. And then how come all of a sudden we begin to see this kind of degeneration in the standard practice that is expected?
Let's be very honest with ourselves. Historically, from January 15, 1966, the Nigerian military, especially the army, has been gradually atrophying in their value base. You see, we tend to want to glamorize things and talk things like as though a military coup is an act of treasonable felony. A military coup is an act of mutiny.
Yes.
January 15, 1966, some idealistic, I call them idealistic because, you know, some of their members, some of those who partook in the coup, who were fortunate to outlive the Civil War, wrote books or granted interviews where they were trying to paint a picture that they wanted to correct the political anomalies that they perceived was happening in the country, and that they wanted to bring about socialistic tendencies to make sure that the welfare of the people was bettered. But Bola Oba, my opinion is that they were young, vaultingly ambitious, idealistic young men. When they did what they had to do, unfortunately, they were not the ones who took over the reins of power. The most senior officer of the Nigerian army then took over the reins of power, and in his conduct, his body language, and that is why when we talk about body language, you know, regarding this president, some people would think that they just often want to find any terminology or any phraseology to indict the man or stigmatize the man. In his body language, he was seen to be acting in favor of the region that produced him, and within the army again, some elements rose up based on their primordial loyalty and eliminated that one. At least Aguiyi-Ironsi was just perceived. It was not that they had credible discipline. But the element that rose up in July 1966 rose up because they really wanted to orchestrate a vendetta within an army that was supposed to be disciplined. They wanted to orchestrate a vendetta, and that vendetta was based on tribal instinct. After that, in 1970, when was Gowon toppled? 1975, Gowon was toppled. In 1975, another act of indiscipline grew so large within the army that a coup was orchestrated against a sit-tight head of state. The same army, in 1976, murdered the ultimate beneficiary of the 1975 coup, Murtala. They assassinated him. Now, after 1976, the army said in 1979, the army said they were giving powers back to the civilian, which was supposed to be the idea. After 13 years of military rule. In 1983, some vaulting young ambitious officers too making us believe. Whenever the army tells you they are acting on your interest, no, they are acting on their own interest, their pocket. They orchestrated a coup, toppled Shagari. I'm not here saying Shagari's government was the most ideal, but we saw India went through all the madness of the years of the post-independence year. The Indian democracy is one of the most stable on the face of the earth now. Compare that to Pakistan, just beside India, that has always gone on civilian rule, and compare the state of developments of the two nations. My brother, 1983, they toppled Murtala, they toppled Shagari, and those conducts of coup d'etat, they are deep. And you want me to? You want a confession from me? As a young boy, as a young school leaver in 1980, I wanted to enter the NDA so badly. It was at the Kenya cantonment here that we sat the exam. From that time too, they have been using Papa no Papa or who know who to orchestrate your entrance into NDA. My brother, to the last person that I spoke with at the center for that exam in 1981, sorry. To the last person that I spoke with at that center, it was because the army was the best vehicular mechanism. Because the army was the best mechanism through which one could orchestrate political ambition. It was about becoming a governor. When they take you in the army, you serve about 7 or 8 years, or 10 years, you get to a major, you could be. So that was my brother, the culture of opportunism was in it for me, using the army just as a vehicle to articulate personal ambition. At a point, one could see a character like Babangida who perfected the art, and did not only perfect the art, but became a mega beneficiary of such an absurdity. So let's be very honest with ourselves. We're coming a long way to this morass where we are.
Now, you've taken us down the lane of history, a very long history there, of how we could say, question the credibility of that discipline that we've always been quoted. Now, Liborius, I would want to ask you, that fighter jet was said to have successfully routed Boko Haram in Konduga, before it went missing. After it said, and that operation was said to be one of the most successful air operations recently in the fight against Boko Haram. And all of a sudden, just
you see, for me, I've had cause to interact with men the same way I interact with officers, and you find out that the story is usually very contradictory. The story that the men of the Nigerian army,
who really feel the pressure.
The story that they tell you is different from what officers, the generals, tell us on the pages of the newspapers. There was one. See, the young man said that there was an attack they were to carry out. The fighter jet was first to, go
and stuff.
Carry out air raids, and then the foot soldiers will now come in, and that on getting to the place that the fighter jet turned back. That he did, as he's talking to me now, he does not know why the jet turned back.
He was supposed to strife the enemy and
give way to the ground
and the foot soldiers will just go.
And that it takes the intelligence of some of their young commanders, to retreat, and that even the one that led to the mutiny in Maiduguri, and that the boys had, taken tactical position only for them to get instruction from the base to retreat. And the young man said, no, we are looking at these people and we will overrun them from our position. If we retreat, we don't know if some, are laying ambush. Yeah. And they said, no, they must retreat. And that was how they retreated, and, they were ambushed. Some of them were killed prematurely. And that we are talking about also armory. A soldier that is going to fight. You sign for 19 bullets. And the man that you're fighting that had raided your armory is loaded with more than 1,000 bullets.
Across his body.
Across his body. From your armory. The armory that you are mising bullet from. Another man, you mice the bullet, another man will come and raid it and cut it away. And use it.
No. They will, sometimes some of those raids are orchestrated because they have to be used to validate the clandestine surreptitious transactions. Of people who sell those things to them.
I'm telling you, and so when you look at, when you put all of this together and you now come, initially they said it wasn't, the next day, the very next day, they said no, the plane was in Adamawa, that it wasn't missing. And I asked, which one do we believe? And so now you say it was a successful operation, and then all of a sudden, after the successful operation, where the jet was supposed to return back to base,
did not return.
It didn't return.
Typical Nigerian surgery at the teaching hospital.
It was successful, but we lost him.
The operation was successful, but we lost the patient.
We lost the patient. That's what they are telling us. And because we are used to accepting it and say, well, you see anything can happen. Mistake are not known until they have happened. And so we fold our hands and it happened. We have, at some point given kudos to the military to say, well, in spite of, the limited resources and equipment available, that this was the same military that chased the same Boko Haram out of Maiduguri. These were the same military that had gone to Congo to keep peace, that had gone to Liberia. And do you know, when I had cause in the same way to interact with one of the officers that went on this peacekeeping, he said, look, let me tell you, my brother, as a young officer in peacekeeping in Liberia, he said he had about 15 men under him, and of these 15 men, they had about 17 vehicles. And so they were not short
with like extra
of materials. And so you could respond. And because also, mind you, these were not supervised mainly by people from it wasn't solely a Nigerian thing. And so when we look at all of this, and then you now begin to see how our officers are becoming millionaires overnight. Billionaires, because like the history, it's very germane. The history that Bola took us through, it's very, very germane, and we need to pay attention to it. Because a situation where you have people who were not prepared for governance take over the reins of governance, or because they feel we know it better. And then you
because they have
the gun. And then you now had a crop of young men who enlisted in the military, not because
those who enlisted with me then are the colonels, the brigadier generals now.
So that's what I'm saying. Not because
with a motive
of the intention
to serve for glory or the fatherland,
or to maintain the integrity of the military, but because they had the mindset of, look, one day we'll be governors, we'll be head of states, we'll be ministers. But now that ambition have been thwarted, there must be other ways to realize the same ambition. And so once you begin to understand all these little details, you pin them together, you would be able to solve this problem. And then one of the young men also told me, he said, look, do you know that it took us 2 weeks to rout Yomi Johnson and then Samedo out of Liberia? And that the same military, and then before the demise of Benjamin Adekule, he would probably have looked back and asked himself, all those fights, was it worth it? So, and now it saddens me, it is shameful for somebody to come out. It's unfortunate. Do you know the hardest job to do now in Nigeria because of money? Spokesman for government or for government institution. Even you come out to tell yourself lies, even when you know that you're lying. It will be written all over you that you are lying, but you try so hard to convince yourself.
Your mouth will be betraying your face.
And so that is what is happening now. And I sometimes wonder the predicament this military spokesperson finds himself. Even with this Chibok guest thing, today they will come out to tell you we know where they are. And then you now begin to wonder, this reasoning also defies logic. That somebody will kidnap 200 and something guests and keep them in one place for 100 days? And then somebody's telling you we know where they are, we are tracking them. It's just that we don't want to. If we go to rescue them now, we might kill some in the process. The casualty might be more. And then you now ask yourself again, if you know where they are all kept in one place. How many people are guarding them? If you remember the raid in Entebbe. Entebbe. The Israeli raid in Entebbe. It did not take them 20 years of planning to do what they did. If you know what you are doing, how many people are guarding this location that you are just monitoring? Is it 1,000 Boko Haram members? You know, so when you sit down as a reasonable man, sometimes you sit down to, reason these things. You just can't fathom it. It defies logic to you. And then you now begin to ask yourself, this same government that had admitted consistently that Boko Haram has infiltrated its cabinet, that Boko Haram was as a result of the crisis in PDP, and then the same government will sit down and begin to look for perceived enemies somewhere where there are none. And yesterday, I was telling somebody, I said, this Modu Sheriff's issue is now a quagmire to both political parties. Because now it will be difficult for APC to accuse PDP of hobnobbing with somebody who's accused of terrorism because he was with them. That's to tell you the level of the political class that we have.
Now, is it possible that after routing the Boko Haram insurgents, that this jet could still be within the Maiduguri-Adama axis?
It's either of two things. It's either it never routed the Boko Haram, so that the jet was gone down by the same Boko Haram, or the jet, in trying to maneuver tactically, maneuvered into another country. And then maybe soon, somebody will say, well, we found the jet in the bush of Cameroon, where he tactically maneuvered to. Because, my brother, let me tell you, tactical maneuvering in military parlance simply means you have to use your sense to avoid this danger.
Retreat.
You retreat. That's tactical maneuvering. If there's an obstacle, you avoid the obstacle tactically.
Now, brother, the military says it has contacted hunters, the Cameroon, Chad, and Niger Republic in its search and rescue for this jet. Now, how handy is the help from hunters?
The helicopter that flew the late General Azazi and Governor Yakowa, they didn't need hunters to search for it. That helicopter flew from somewhere and was to get to a place, and in the process, it came down. They didn't need to search for it because there was no sabotage somewhere. But for a fighter jet, sorry. Don't conclude
like that.
Because let me. I'm not saying. Maybe I used the wrong word. Sabotage.
Some have alleged.
No. When I said, I didn't want to use the word sabotage. It's a machine. It was communicating with somewhere, and there was at a point you will lost communication, and at that point where you lost communication, your radar will tell you the location. That's what I'm trying to say. So as at the time the helicopter went down, the chopper went down, it was easy for them to locate it, even though in the creek, because there were communication. This same fighter jet, it went somewhere. There were communications. That was how you know that the fighter at Konduga was successful. That was how you know that he did all he was supposed to do. And so definitely there will be communication as the pilot was coming back. At what point did they lost communication with the pilot? And so you begin to look at, now you have GPS. So it is no longer, if you can use satellites to track human beings, human images. So it becomes very easy now, not to talk of, a jet with satellite equipment. So because now, because the Malaysia airline is missing, we would want to tailor it along that line, because after all, there is already precedent somewhere.
All right, let's hear Bola.
When things like this happen normally, you can enjoin the local community, members of the local community of the suspected area that you think the craft must have failed.
Okay, let me take you a little bit away on that, on enjoining. Why I'm asking that question?
The Obudu craft was actually found by hunters.
This is quite different from the Obudu. Now, this is a situation where we knew, as of last week, the hunters within that Bama Meduguri region came out to decry neglect after putting themselves together with some of the civilian JTF to also fight the Boko Haram. They have no government assistance. This is an area that is infiltrated by insurgents all over the place. And now you have hunters to help you go into those deserted areas to search for a plane that you are looking for.
The truth is that notwithstanding the increased circumstance of human displacement, because the local situation there has triggered verifiable human displacements, people becoming refugees within their own country because they have to leave their primary community to seek safety and succor in other places, except it's only Professor Jega that is not as all those ones
that is not aware of those movements.
That's the topic for another day. The guys, anyway, we know that notwithstanding those movements, people still function in some communities, and where people function anyway, hunting is one of the most inevitable means of subsistence in places like that. So the military can enjoin local hunters to look out for any strange object in the forest when they go hunting. However, he made a point earlier on that I don't want us to just walk away from. He made the point, in passing, and that is that there may not have been any bombing, the flight may not even have taken place. You see, all wars, according to a book that I read, The Art of War, by Sun Tzu, all wars are based on deception. All wars. There's no way you'll be in a state of war and information will not be managed in a manner sometimes bordering on total, utter lies. So we don't even know, because you mentioned the point, you didn't have the opportunity to accentuate it. Look, some of the things we are looking at now, until somebody, a participant, writes a book, say, in the immediate or not so distant future or in the future, we may not know the genuineness of some of the things, some of the rabbits they are making us to even chase now in the news. Because truly, the two sides now, because they perceive they are in a state of war, are using the instrumentality of deception to even engage, to address those of us who are.
All right, we're going to take a break, but before we do that, now Liboros made mention of something earlier, and that is the fact that standard practice to have communication between the jet.
No, Nigeria claims. When Liboros mentioned that,
the military said the statement the military made was that the flight left at 10:45 a.m. and is expected back to base at 12 noon, and nobody said we lost communication at so time.
No, look. Yeah. One of the things that Nigeria recently was priding itself for was that we have a radar that covers the whole nation. In fact, it was said that
And there was no way a plane will be missing again in Nigeria.
That, they said it. And I don't know whether these people remember what they say. This is a country that claims, with the help of the Chinese, to have about 2 or 3 satellites. Roaming around the world, space. My brother, our own satellites not they help us for our war.
We'll come back to that and then look at it critically after this break. Viewers, it's been Core Digest, and we've been looking at the uncertainty surrounding the missing fighter jet in Adama over the weekend by the military. We'll take a break and we'll be back to continue. Please don't go away.
Core TV News, expanding your view. You can now watch Core TV News live from anywhere in the world on our website, www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to Core TV Primetime Days.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click Core TV, leave a space, then News. Core TV News, a 24-hour news station.
The deadly Ebola virus is again spreading in West Africa. The virus has fatality rates of up to 90%, meaning many who contract the disease die. A subcontinent have witnessed over 900 deaths. Please help prevent the spread of Ebola by observing the following precautions. This is a social responsibility awareness campaign of Core TV News.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we've been talking about the uncertainties surrounding the missing fighter jet in Adama over the weekend. A statement by the military said the jet has not been found. And I have here Liborius Osoma and Bola Oba, who has been helping us analyze the situation and look at discussions and statements surrounding this so much talked about, the disappearance of the military jet. Before we went on break, we were talking about the ability of the country to be able to take care of these situations and get the correct information. They are tracking the airspace and making sure that jets are not missing. And you mentioned the satellites that we have in space also.
No, let's take it from the micro to the macro now. My brother, let's be very methodical because, you see, because of the absurdity that the absurdities sometimes that are inherent in some of the pieces of news we get. They almost sometimes want to make one to go very comical. But let's get serious now. When you are airborne in a fighter jet, when you are airborne, and as a pilot or as the military operatives in the jet, say you and your navigator, if you perceive any danger to that craft, unlike in civil aircraft, in the fighter jet, you have the ability of ejection. They call it ejection. When a jet is in danger, because the military designers of the jet, because the designers of the jet know that the life of the operative is far more valuable than the jet, because they know the number of years that your establishment may have trained you in reasonable jurisdictions. So I'm not talking about any this thing. You know, you have the opportunity of an ejection. You just press the button, your seats will detach away from the craft. The craft will be going to its own position, and when your seats detach away from this thing, a parachute will emerge from your seat and protect your life. Now, if that jet was going into such a serious danger, the pilots ought to have ejected, and by now we should have heard from the pilots. At least they would have known.
And then quickly to
because
add
I take it from the micro
yes,
to the macro.
And then to add, a fighter jet that leaves base consistently communicates with the base, because there is a commander at the base that giving instruction to the pilot on what to do.
Okay,
because sometimes you can even, based on the instruction from the ground foot soldiers, you can even be recalled. You can be asked not to even bomb the areas you were supposed to, because probably the areas are not being cleared properly, or some things had been located or noticed. You know, so
that is even before ejection.
A constant communication.
That is one. Two is that every jet in a normal society, even my 3 million naira car, all these cars, before you do comprehensive insurance, you must track.
Yes.
So we have not tracked our own jet. We are moving from the micro to the macro. No, let's do.
But we've been told the operation was successful, so probably the tracking gave that result.
In the process of operating, the tracking device, pulled off the jet, and so the jet just got missing.
We have not tracked. So the fighters too, they had death wish, or they had death wishes. They perished with the jet. Okay, forget about that one. Nigerian aviation industry, not too long ago, they were claiming we have coast to coast, cover to cover, radar cover over this country. That if any craft drops now in Nigeria, they will pinpoint where that craft is. That cover to cover radar, this thing. What happened to her?
This has exposed it.
Okay, no. Forget about that. National Space Agency, Nigeria's our space agency, our own space agency. As we speak now, we have minimum of 2 satellites in space, at least on paper. Sat1, Sat2, this thing. Okay, one is said to be dedicated to telecommunications. The other one is dedicated to monitoring environmental, agricultural, and whatever. The thing where go see corn for Mambila Plateau is supposed to see aeroplane. No.
Exactly.
Let's get serious.
No, we are already serious. These are serious statements that have been made.
Because I call it comic relief. Because when you analyze it logically, there is no conclusion. They don't stand on the face of, forensic analysis. These are you know, reasonable questions that
satellite
a common man will ask.
dedicated to environmental, agricultural, climatological this thing. At least if something go see corn for field, corn, and if something go see say locust or pest, if something go see say there's an environmental abuse, maybe bushfire or wildfire, you're supposed to see aircraft now. At a point when there was this bushfire or wildfire in Indonesia, the Nigerian Space Agency came out and said they were one of the first people to notice it in their own
satellites.
I beg, for God's sake, Nigeria get our own fire now. Make us.
Now, there's a statement that Liboros made earlier that I said you should analyze, was this statement by the military that only gave the information that the fighter jet left at 10:45 a.m. and is expected back at base by 12. So if you say there's a constant communication,
it is not a downfall boss, and you say he leaves the park by so and so time. Even modern transport station, they still have radio communication.
All these ABCs, them, all these transport companies, when they leave their,
they have radio communications.
Where you there now? There, Badon. You are okay. Traffic there. This traffic there. Traffic not there. How are you moving? Keep it to time.
Let's take a contribution from Aduku.
Jet.
We have Aduku from Abuja. Aduku, thank you for calling into the program. Hello, can you hear us?
Good morning, and I'm listening to your program with keen interest. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I say I've been listening to your program with keen interest. This is not a laughing issue. We are looking at this thing like a child play. Thank God, most people are talking about the IS and other militant groups in the Middle East. Those of us around Abuja now, we are just praying to God. Because if we are not careful, they will chase us, I will come and meet you in Lagos. It's not a laughing issue. The government have to stand up to this issue. The military, I'm not a military personnel, I don't know, I think there's something terribly wrong. Something is heavily wrong somewhere. But if we don't address it properly now, we'll run into deep shit. We've not forgotten about the bomb blast. I live very close, just by Nyanya, and that morning when it happened, what I saw was the smoke. I didn't even hear the gun. I mean the sound. It's my children that run up to daddy. We found out how the blast. Please, I think it's an issue that the whole country should stand up for. We, on our part, should support the military. But I think there's something terribly wrong between our armed forces. Maybe because when the Nigerian army were good, this was about 10 years ago, the young men who have no job and have no option than to join the military, maybe not out of their wish, are not living up to expectation. Do not forget, somewhere in Northeast, the retired tribesmen say they will come back and go to the front line. Also, I want to remind you guys that recent hunters, ordinary hunters, killed so many BOKO HARAM in Meduguri or in the forest somewhere there. It was in the news, I'm sure one of your stations too picked it up. Hunters with dead guns. Let me use the word dead gun because if BOKO HARAM are using more sophisticated weapon and the army have their own weak weapon and ordinary hunters. There was a time people might kill these BOKO HARAM people. They are disloyal people. They are not people that should come and terrorize us anywhere. I look at it totally as disloyal people. So please, let's view this issue seriously. Let's not look at the money aspect for now. Definitely, some people are making money out of it. But let's be safe first.
All right, Ajuku, thank you for that meaningful contribution. And he brought our man back to quite a few things.
Yes, fantastic contribution. Not that we are laughing about
it's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy, but when you look at the reasoning, that the authorities are profiling, you cannot but laugh at the face of how it falls.
My brother,
in the face of
let's give another example now. About maybe 340 or 400 million US dollars equivalent in naira was supposedly spent to put CCTV camera across the greater Abuja area. And bombings happened in Abuja. We cannot get a single CCTV footage. On the 7th of July, when that thing happened in London, in less than 24 hours, the CCTV, this thing was...
All the boys, all the masterminders, all the
this thing, their faces were out. In the Boston Marathon, this thing about 2 or so years ago, in less than 48 hours, we have seen the picture of that boy with this thing. Nigeria government, our government, claimed to have used a humongous amount of money to install CCTV across Abuja, and bombings are happening all across Abuja.
And yet, like what the caller just said, if the same Boko Haram can walk into Abuja, bomb the police headquarters, United Nations, and now if a fighter jet falls into their hand, Lagos will not even be safe, not to talk of Abuja. No. And that is the seriousness Nigerians should look at it from. No. And then also, when you look at the statement also, if hunters with Dane gone can kill as much as...
Can give it to the Boko Haram.
I was about making some comparisons with that statement. Just last week, I'm not cutting you short, but I'm going to take the discussion further from the point at which you took it. The president made a statement and said there is no more space for feeble minds in the Nigerian army. Now, we were talking about people you made mention earlier, which the caller also affirmed, people who rather for lack of job or rather for the ambition of trying to hold on political, went into the army. And just as you were talking now, that reference to that statement, I think the reports we had about in the bushes in Michika, about 80 Boko Haram members were killed by hunters with those Dane guns, like you are saying.
Machete. They showed it on.
Now, how do we get to overhaul the Nigerian army to bring it back to the point where it's supposed to?
It's not the blame of the Nigerian army alone. Mr. President making such statements is trying to shift the blame from both the political class to the Nigerian army alone. You have boys dying in the field, all in the name of fight against insurgents. We set up a JTF. Now they want to set up a special brigade. I wonder what JTF is, if it's not a special brigade. And then now you transfer, because everybody had been saying this is not the same Nigerian army that we know. Now it is easy for the political class to transfer the problem solely, let it rest solely at the doorstep of the Nigerian army. I tell you
but in that army, young men, boys, who may be ready to fight, you are giving them just 1,000 naira for feeding a day, and that 1,000 naira is not as if they can quickly go to one mama put there. Well, if they die in the course of the war, they are not sure if their wives at home are not going to be booted out of the barracks in less than 1 week. No insurance for their children. They are given peanuts that, my brother, we all live in Nigeria. Now look at how dapper you are looking. This suit no be some little change buy now. They give them the kind of money that for their families. Until we address the systemic madness.
When you put all of this together,
I won't fight well.
The same people.
Exactly.
Somebody will tell you when they go for international peacekeeping, they are unified.
And the circumstances are right.
Heated. But here, you are fighting for your own country.
They come out with calculates.
Even your kids, you have to bribe to
16
get
bullets.
it.
How many?
No,
Yeah,
I'm going to ask a question. Why is it difficult for us to effect that immediately, taking care of the morale and
Corruption
then the benefits? Because the president said,
Let me quickly
said,
say this. Let me quickly on this same Boko Haram. Remember the Chibok girls issue, the visitation of the Chibok parents to Mr. President. The 100 million naira to date. Do you know what happened to it? Where the government came out to say they gave 100 million naira to the parents as transport fare, and at the end of the day, what got to the parents was 7 million plus. Where somebody was going knocking from door to door to share 100,000, 200,000 to the guests, and then some parents back home got as low as 2,000 naira, and yet that special advisor will still be advising the same government.
Oh yes.
That person that was supposed to superintend
we have
be tweeting.
We have the
you know,
temerity.
So when you have a lack of leadership,
bring back Jonathan
2015. When you have, you know, a country that is bereft of leadership, both at the national up to the local level,
the political leadership and the senior military leadership have betraying the boys.
No, it's a connivance.
I've said this several times before. Our boys are not cowards.
These are the same people.
But the system is failing them.
Now, because you remember in the Burma attacks, you remember the local people there commended the boys for standing firm to fight back.
Bola was there. We listened to the special advisor to the Borno State Governor, and he said that until the coming of JTF, that Boko Haram had even taken over the Maiduguri town, that JTF came and flushed them out of Maiduguri and chased them to the bush. But now, if you remember also, the same JTF at some point invaded Boko Haram's camp and where they discover pornographic movies, condoms, raided Sambisa Forest. This same Sambisa Forest that we're talking about. And all of a sudden, that same army that, you know, carried out these
all these successes.
All of a sudden, the same army, Boko Haram will write them that we are coming to raid your barrack. And the Boko Haram will come and raid and be successful. All of a sudden, if you remember also, in some 9 local government before the coming of JTF, Boko Haram had hoisted their flag. Yeah. But this same JTF came and chased away all of these people and reclaimed this. And now Boko Haram is declaring a caliphate in these same places. And here you say this lily-livered army personnel. There is a connivance between the political class and the army hierarchy. And
there's a dictum. There's a dictum in the military world that says there are no bad armies. There are bad generals.
Generals lead troops to war.
Leadership is the strategic part of any this. Even in politics, waiting with the talk. We know that the political configuration of this polity as it is now is in itself very, very, very dystopic. It frustrates the best of this thing. But if you have a character like Obafemi Awolowo, I'm just using some names now. Look, if you have some characters, take some governors even presently. Go to the Akwa Ibom guy, Fashola in Lagos, Oshiomhole in Edo,
Chime Enugu.
Chime Enugu. Take some of those characters and make them president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You will still see the positive difference. I'm not saying that it will suddenly become Eldorado or Utopia, but you will see the difference because we have seen those guys at the local level, at the state level, orchestrate some difference that some people had formerly been giving us excuses about. Political leadership has to straighten itself. Senior military leadership has to straighten itself. Our boys that are good is the leadership that is
because no army wants to die.
Oh yes.
Let's give Socrates the opportunity. Probably might be the last call. Socrates, can you hear us? Hello, Socrates.
Why is it that the issue of Boko Haram came up and Nigerians cannot stand together to say no to Boko Haram? Thank you very much.
Wow, that question.
That's the failure of leadership that we're talking about. The Boston Marathon bombing, you saw as diverse as American political classes. If you hear the Republican talk today, you will think, look, Obama came from here. If you hear the Democrat talk about George Bush, you would think they are not from the same country. But they threw all of these aside and stood
Common
solidly.
enemy.
Common enemy. There's a common enemy. We need to. The same thing that is happening now. But here, a government in place, the first thing to do is to take charge. You don't trade blame. You can trade blames later, but take charge. Put the situation under control, truly, and not sloganize it. And then when you take charge and put the situation under control, investigate, then you can now begin to trade blame. And then say, look, we discovered that this happened, and so we are going to bring the perpetrators and the financiers to book. And not here when everybody knows the financier apart from the government.
All right, let's listen to our work calling from Kaduna.
I just want to say I commend the speakers over the BOKO HARAM thing, particularly on the jet issues. This is a primary thing that is so much taking of our lifetime in Nigeria. We have no agenda. It's as if we have no agenda against only BOKO HARAM. Of course, it's important. The leadership is the problem. We need all generals, serving and retired. I want to suggest here that, please, we need those experienced old generals to advise our serving military men. We have very excellent soldiers. I tell you, we have excellent boys. It is the problem of the leadership in terms of corruption that leads to not knowing exactly what is going on. The whole thing is like gimmicks. The whole thing is like drama. How on earth our so much trained airmen, where are they? That we will be talking about a single jet, listen, as if we don't have the control on airspace. Where is the satellite? I want to call here, please. Let us stop deceiving.
Thank you, Awok. Thank you for that meaningful contribution.
And we have asked you where the satellite they do, where the cover to cover they do.
So when you talk about leadership, it's all encompassing.
Yeah, the military is talking about recalling those some of those retired officers.
It's
to
not.
be part
See,
of
let
the
me
fight.
tell you, you have generals now. Who is a general in the army? When you say this man is a general, when you hear in other climes that they are going to war, they are led by a general.
My brother,
it is believed you might not be on the ground, but tactically, you sit down, you draw up a plan, your line of action, and then you pursue it, vigorously. That's leadership. And then in some cases, you see these people, lead troops. You hear somebody say, look, I will, because it's a slap on your face. You wear uniform with shining stars, and yet you cannot. There is so much insecurity in your land, and you're a general. You cannot.
I said, my brother.
People who are not trained in the act of warfare are defeating you. That is trained, and then you sit down and still address yourself as a general. You chase people away from the road using siren.
This is not the normal war.
Look, let me tell you, whether normal or not normal, I listened to General Abis in summer, and he said, Metasine is the same thing with Boko Haram. In 1976, when Metasine first read its ugly head through the same region, the Chad River Basin, and he was asked to go and quell it. He led soldiers, and that it was strategy. What did he do?
No, wait.
In every community, there is a police division head office. Yeah. And so, there is no way you will achieve this without information. Everybody talks of information gathering, intelligence. Okay, it is not rocket science.
Let's quickly give Bola, because of our time. Let's quickly give Bola the opportunity so that we can round up.
We have fundamental problems. And until those fundamental problems are addressed, the boys our boys, they are not Martians, they are not Venetians, they are not from Venice. So we need to address the failure of political leadership and the failure of senior officers corps in the Nigerian Armed Services.
Because even if you record them, they are not the ones that are going to fight the war. They are not the foot soldiers.
I am reading a book now called Hannibal, the biography of Hannibal. As far back as 2,400, 2,500 years ago, you will see what is the meaning of being called a general. A general is a man who sits and sees everything here being won, and he devises a way that will move an army to pass through the wall. Hannibal moved the Carthaginian army across the Alps. Even when we fly across the Alps now, you are still intimidated by the nature of the inclemency of the environment. He moved more than 100,000 soldiers on foot, and elephant and horses across the Alps from Morocco, today's Morocco or North Africa, moved them through Spain, the Pyrenees, across the Pyrenees, the Alps, and landed in Italy to go and face Rome. These ones, generals.
And so when I said,
it's
not about recalling the retired generals because they contributed to the decay that we are facing today.
No, you're talking not just the generals, but
it's about
some of the
leadership.
military men.
It's about purposeful leadership. It's recently they said they were enlisting foot soldiers. Nobody would want to go and enlist, knowing the decay here, to go and die.
People, they go enlist because
there are no jobs. What we need, what we are asking for is purposeful leadership. We've seen the military do the same thing. So we know their capability, we know their capacity, we know it is not difficult for them to do if they truly want to do it. But what we are saying is we see the hand of with the hand of Jacob or the voice of Esau.
All right, I think we will have to round up here because our time is far up. Thank you so much for obliging to be.
I'm so humbled and honored to be called upon by such
and thank you for that incisive decision. I hope, and it's our wish, that these discussions will lead to the change that we all aspire and wish to see in our country, and especially with the war against insurgents and terrorism. Our viewers, it's been Core Digest, and we looked at Boko Haram fight, the uncertainty that is surrounding the missing fighter jet. That's as much as we can take on Core Digest today. Thank you for being there with us. News on the Hour is next. Do enjoy the rest of our programming.
Nigerians continue to
Tonight, the city of Lagos once again. Be the first to know. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa, we break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV.
24-hour news station.